Virginia Satir, internationally recognized as a pioneer in family therapy and human relations, dedicated her life to developing and teaching skills to improve relationships in both families and organizations. Her goal was to raise social consciousness about the importance of world peace, individual health, and personal responsibility. This videotape training series demonstrates these goals. Although Virginia died in 1988, her wisdom and spirit live on through her teachings. In 1987, Virginia Satir was videotaped at the Avanta-sponsored Virginia Satir International Summer Institute in Crested Butte, Colorado. In this human learning laboratory, Virginia and her training staff worked for 4 weeks with 90 people from around the world. This tape is one of a series which contains specially selected teaching units from the last process community that Virginia taught.
I have said to you before that I believe that we are in another evolution in humankind. In fact, I know it. And when I look back in history and I read some of the people who looked like they were way ahead of their time, I think what was happening is that they were at the edge of something new. Maybe not really new, but new as far as the large majority of people were concerned. I've always been a student of history. I love history. And I know, for instance, there were times in the world when people didn't know that the world was round. There were times long, long ago when people didn't know that intercourse between men and women is what produced babies. I know there was a time in the world when people felt that it was just and okay that people of different colored skins would be slaves because they weren't people. I know that from history. All right. We have moved through, much like I feel that we keep on looking at the continuing layers of what human beings are like, what the world is like. And we always start out simplistically. That's, by the way, different from being simple. I don't know how many of you can have an imagination of what do you suppose life was like for your mother when she was 14? Or your grandmother when she was 12? Or your grandfather when he was 8? Or his grandfather? What kinds of things did people look at? What did they feel they had to pay attention to? And as far as I can tell, for the most part, people until relatively recently, until this century, people paid mostly attention to the outer things, not much to the inner. When Mesmer, when was that, in the 1700s? Came, and there was something inside at that time. Then Freud was the one who ushered in so much of what we have now. Adler, Jung were also in that place. And we have taken the thread that was planted, or thread doesn't get planted, we've taken the thread that was developed about what are our insides like. It started back in the late 1880s or so. And we have been looking at that. Now we know that inside and outside has something to do with what happens to behavior. Behavior itself has existed from the beginning of time. For instance, killing has been behavior that everybody knows about. It's always been there. I don't know about tears, but I know killing has. All right. So where we are, as far as I know, where I believe, we are in the place where we are there to amplify, to clarify, to deepen and to broaden how the inside and the outside of persons work. Freud's findings were very important because Freud said something that had never been said before, that we have the seeds of our construction as well as our destruction within. Before that, everything was without. And the way you helped people was to try to get rid of whatever. The devil crept in, or you were tainted, you had bad blood. We're not far away from that, you know. Anyway, the point of it is that we, not just the people in this room, but the people who live in this time, are now the creators, in a way, of a new approach and a new way of looking at people. So what I'm going to talk to you about this morning is something I've put together as I have listened to people, as I've worked with people. And in 51 years, you get a lot of experience, I will tell you. And you know you've got a chance to meet with so many, many, many people. You get a chance to look at your prejudices and see them fall to the ground, or your stereotypes, or your conclusions. And so what you do is you notice all kinds of things that never before you thought about. When I was that little girl of 9 years old and I looked in my geography book and saw those beautiful faces, for me all those colors were wonderful. I never in my wildest dreams could ever think that being a different color was something bad. I didn't learn that till later. That's what they told me. So many things. We are living in a world in which we are literally categorized down to the last toenail. Too fat, too thin, too white, too green, too I don't know what. And then the other thing is business about putting in pigeonholes. Women are like this, men are like that, 6-year-olds are like that, and all that rest of that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, I'm only putting that forward because I've had to forgive myself many, many times for going towards something with something I thought was a way to look at it, and then I found it wasn't so. I'll give you one little example. When I first started going abroad, and I went into countries where the people didn't have white skins, and they would say to me, stay so many feet away from an Arab, for quote, an Arab. When you meet somebody who is Oriental, don't look at them. When you meet an Indian person, don't expect them to look at. I was full of that stuff. But there was something nice about me which I've always appreciated. Whatever I find something at a moment in time that doesn't fit the book, I throw the book away. I love it. That's how I got to be called a freak at the beginning. But anyway. So, we're full. What I want to say to you is, I know you are full, as I am, of ideas based on experience, based on hearsay, and so on. When Alejandro was up here the other day talking about, could there be more people from minorities here? I hope that will happen. But I know that's not going to happen until we all get a different view, minorities included. Because there are plenty of people whom we call minorities who do not feel that they want even to be with other people. So there's a whole thing. It isn't. We can't say this is how whites are. This is how Mexican Americans are. This is how men are. Well, women are. But it's scary when we leave that, because for many of these things we have negative value systems. I remember when I was 15 years old, I was in college. And I was doing some work at a neighborhood center in which there were many black people. And I was doing, it was always funny, because I was teaching a class in dramatics to the older people. And 2 young black men who were friends. I mean, we were, what were they, 17? I was 15. They were taking me to the streetcar. And 2 white policemen came, separated us, and talked to me like I'd never been talked to, and talked to these men like I've never been talked to. Well, the world is full of things like that. I've known it for a long time. But I think I want you all, I hope you all, will be in this space, which I hope I am. I'm going to come with what I have. But if I find that what I have doesn't fit where I go, I will be free to look. And I won't have to insist. Now, you see, what we're dealing with is security. And I'm going to go on into this. The security of hanging on, or the security of being able to move when you're in a process of transition. So with all these remarks, what I really want, these are like prefaces for what I'm doing. To now be as though I went to the airport control tower position up here, looked, and then I put these things together as I watched in this wonderful, scary time of movement. What I call what I do, ways of viewing the world. Would be nice if this were a continuation, but it isn't. So we'll have it like this. One thing that I noticed as I worked with people, all kinds of people, was that there were 4 things. If I understood them, I could almost read anything these people would do. And the first one had to do with how people perceived a relationship or pairing. I'll put that right here. How they looked at pairing, which is the me-you. That was number 1. The second one was how they defined a person, the definition of a person. Who is a person? And the third one was the explanation of an event. Why did that happen? What is the reason for that? And the fourth one was the attitude toward change. Now, I saw those all as neutral, but basic to all human life. The definition of a pair, which is the same as a relationship, the definition of a person, the explanation of an event, and the attitude toward change. Now, what I found was that with very, very, very few exceptions, as I looked at all the different symptoms, as I looked at all the different problems in all the different colors, in all the different whatevers, pairing always had the same look. And that meant was somebody on the top and somebody on the bottom. Now, and that model was made up of somebody who was the caretaker, and the child was the victim or the victimizer, was some form of dominance and submission, malevolent or benevolent. So that this whole thing was a form of dominance and submission. And the question was whether the nature of it would be malevolent or benevolent. Now, to make my point at this moment, I want to have 3 men and 3 women to please come here. Come, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3. And I think I have everybody now. Let's see, do I have 6? 3 women, 3 men. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, we'll take the 2 women over here, 2 women right there. And we'll take 2 men. Why don't Louis go over there with Sean? Okay, all right. Now, I don't know if you realize that these are the only possibilities you can have in life. There isn't anything else. If you're a male, you're with another male or a female, that's all. If you're a female, you can only be with another female or a male, that's all. This is all there is. Now, we can color them, different skins. We can put different languages in their mouth. We can have them eat different food. Basically, that's all there is. All there is. So that means that we are working with a universe of 3. 3 possibilities, that's all. And why does it seem like it's so much? Well, because we have roles. and we have designations. Now, pairing means two. And that's, by the way, all you can do at a moment in time in another with anyone else. You can't look two at the same time. We learned that yesterday. Now, let's take the first role designations we get. Here are two males. All right? Let's put them in a family context, and they would be brothers. Two sisters. You move over here a little bit down. And here is a father and a mother. A husband and a wife, we could say. We could also call this one, we go up a little bit, here's a father and a son. There is a mother and a daughter. Here's a father and a daughter, a mother and a son. A grandmother and a granddaughter. And a grandfather and a grandson. Grandmother and grandson. You see, the genitals don't change. But we have acted as though they have. That's how we get all these funny ideas. And no matter what role we put on top of their head, it doesn't change their heart. And it doesn't change the way they breathe. It doesn't change any of those things. All it changes is the way they look at themselves or others, which is very powerful because that's thought. We now know that by our thought, we can even change how our heart rate is. So it's pretty powerful what we call ourselves. However, the basic things are still the same. Now, I'll go into the workplace. There's the president and the vice president, president and the secretary, the vicar in the church, and the deacon. Doesn't matter. In a school, here is the principal and there's one of the teachers. There's the board of education and the guy in the legislature who is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Let's try to get that together. I have a funny hunch that when we really get that together, we will always know where to go. Now, we can do it, friends. We can talk at nations. Doesn't really matter. Gorbachev and Reagan. Doesn't matter. Khomeini and whoever else. We just look at it. All right. Now I'm going to show these people, regardless of their labels, regardless of their roles, I want to show you now the dominant submissive position. Will you each take A, one be A and one be B? Okay. Now, since this is a position that has been known for all time, it's pretty much entrenched in us. All right, so now I'm going to do, this is the beginning of the communication. I think I must have seen it that long ago. I can't remember all the details. Want all A's to be in front of B, on one toe, one knee, and one toe, down, one knee. I tell you what I think, let's do it this way so that people can see it a little bit easier. Just do it sideways, okay? All right. One toe, one knee, one toe. Now, put your right hand on your heart and take your left hand and swoop it up as though you were warding off something, and then put it kind of behind your shoulder and look up, and your mouth will automatically hang open. So whatever could drop in it will drop in it. That's pretty good, okay. Now you can not have your neck hurt quite so much and make it look a little bit not quite so much. I don't want you to have a neck ache because I don't want anybody to go out here telling you I gave him a pain in the neck. Okay, all right, okay. Now relax that a little bit. Now that position can also look like this. You recognize this position? This is a position which says, I'm little, I'm frightened, I'm powerless, all those kinds of things. And I gave that the name placating. Now you can also do this, and that is hump your back a little bit. That's right. And then you can try to hold up your head a little bit. Now when we put that kind of picture in, the humping of the back here, penitent, placating again in another kind of way. Okay. Some of you may even have pictures of yourselves as children in some of these positions. All right. Now, this is a position of powerlessness, of inability and because there's no opportunity to see what the world looks like, the most comfortable position in this place is to look at the floor. Put your floor, put your floor. And you get a highly developed skill of what the floor looks like. Not very much about anything else. All right. Now, let's look now at B. B here, one of the things B can do in this position, put your hand on your hip, put one foot forward. That's right. Now, over in this position, I think you better come out a little way or they can't see you so well. Now with you do, that's the malevolent position. Now what you do is you keep patting him on the head. That's benevolent. And what you do is you stand upright. This is worship. That's right. Hand on your, I wouldn't even, that's right, just like that. That's right. And you worship. That's right. Okay. These three positions have dominated human relationships. This we call teaching. This we call love, and that we call respect. Okay? Now, in that relationship, what do we learn? I'm going to find out. I'd like to know what you're feeling right here, right now. Tell me.
I'm feeling like I'm a nothing.
I'm a nothing.
I don't have any power.
Powerless.
And I'm a total victim.
Okay. Vulnerable to whatever anyone wants you to do. Kick you in the teeth, sweep you up, take you to a brothel, whatever. Okay? The cults have thrived on this kind of thing. I'm nothing. Okay. Tell me how you're feeling.
Real uncomfortable and kind of disgusted.
Uncomfortable, disgusted. What else?
Actually kind of lonely.
Lonely, okay, but nobody would know it by looking at you, right? What are you feeling down here?
I'm feeling I've had just about enough of being patted on the head, and I'm thinking about ways in which I can hit this person or do something to get out of this position, and I'm real angry.
I've had enough of being patted on the head. I'm just about ready to blow. Now, this wouldn't be very long when this one could leap up in a moment, do something, go right back. You've seen it. Okay. This is supposed to be love. It's making him angry. Now, if she'll get a chance to see his face a little bit, she will feel he's very ungrateful. Because here she is, giving him all these strokes. That ungrateful fellow. How are you feeling?
There's just a tightness and almost like pain in my muscles. They're just really like that. And this, I don't like it.
What do you feel inside?
Real off balance, and my world is right here, and I don't know what's out there at all.
Do you ever see those mothers that are so glued to their kids they can't leave? Okay, all right. Okay, relax that for a moment. Then you relax a little bit. I don't want your back to hurt. Now let's go over here to worship. What are you feeling?
Well, I'm not happy.
You're not happy? Who said you should be? Life is a terrible thing.
I'm uncomfortable.
You're uncomfortable?
And I'm alone. I'm not in relationship. I mean, I can't see anything but the floor.
Uh-huh.
And
Well,
so I'm feeling myself and my unhappiness.
well, if you'd had different parents or different growing up or something, you'd probably be in a different space. If you had more money, were a different color, or I don't know what. Okay, what do you feel?
I'm feeling distanced. My legs are sore. I feel like I'd be toppled easily and unconnected.
Okay. Now, we know those feelings. Just relax a little bit. We know those feelings. How many times a day do you hear them? How many times have you felt them yourself? All right. Now, relax a little bit here, because I wanted to share something with you. I had a wonderful time, a wonderful opportunity at one time. I was with 3 physicians. This is long ago. I was still in Chicago, so it had to be in the 50s. And they asked me, they knew something about what I was doing, and they asked me to see all their patients. And at that time, I didn't know about the stances, but I began to watch. I saw patients with all kinds of diseases, because one was an internist, and one, I think, was a gynecologist, and the other one was a bone person. What are the bone? Orthopedist. I saw all these people. And then I began to look at them and watch what happened. And I began to put a voice together, the whiny voice, with this hump, kind of the body. And with the body kind of being off balance. And I saw the people with the stridence, their voices, and I saw how these muscles were tight, and I saw how this was standing out, and listened to the voices, and I began to become aware about what the price these people were paying for what was happening to them. But more than that, I could see, I just exaggerated what I saw. That's what I created the stances from. And then I could understand a whole lot of things. All right, now let's look at both these people. Let's just change the positions. And who was down goes up now. Because that's one of the ways that people try to get relief. If somebody's been doing like that to you, at a certain point in time, you want to go back and do like that to them. That's one of the reasons why people would talk about, she was always so gentle. And one day, she was the nicest person. She never complained. Boy, when I hear that one, I think, oh, boy, watch it. Anyway, all right. Now take the reverse position. Remember the adjectives: being lonely, angry, not being connected, isolated, all those things. We hear them all over the place. All right, put your hand on your hip. That's a good solid one. Put one foot out where you really go. That's right, where you really look tough. Okay? All right. Now, what I've seen people do is try to make this position into this one. You pat her. Pat her. Be nice. And many therapies are based on the fact, stop being bad and be nice. And one of the things I hope will happen here is nice and bad are not what we're talking about, to be real and whole. Those are the words I'm looking for. To be real and whole. But we've been working on that thing for so long. All right. Now, if you now go into teeter-totter, up and down. Let's do up and down now. That's how you do your life, up and down. Now, what I want you to really catch on this one is at the time at which you go from up to down, you can feel you made progress. And that's what's been happening to people. I can't stand the blaming anymore, so I do the placating. And if that's all I know, then that's what I do. And this is, for me, the important piece that we have to look at. Changing who is doing what is not what's going to do it. We have a whole new consciousness to do. But within this frame, there isn't anything else except the following. Now, following are variations of this. At a certain point in time, where was it? With you, you get up and you may start blaming him while he's still down. That's good what he'll do. And now, at this moment in time, let's say you've had it, you're going to get up and blame her. And now we're going to have all hell breaking loose. This is adolescent rebellion. That's right. Very good. And now we have over here, let's try the same thing with that. You want something, so you get up at this point, and you try to get something, and you remain like a stone. And you try to get something from him, so now you try to make funnies. Put your feet together and try to get his attention. That's right. Okay. So that's what you try to do to get life over there. Over here, now you're going to try to do this, and now we can go to that till blood. Or what we can do is we can say, one of you can say, oh my God, I'm doing that to my mother. Turn away, and we have that. And you might then at that point in time come over here and down in front. I didn't mean to do it. This is the dialogue. And this is a dialogue you're going to find in your families. And it's not because your people are bad. It's because we haven't known anything else. Because the only way we have known up to this point, in any mass way at all, was simply to change our position. That's all. and never to go into wholeness. Now, try to get at them with your feet, okay? And now all of these mirror the fact that you define me. When I started working with families, and I started helping people stand on their own feet, most everybody else crashed for a while. Until I was able to change the whole consciousness about people. All right. Now, what I want you to do now is, I want you to take your positions hard. All of you, take your positions hard. Because there's another point to all this. And the point is, we're always doing the best we can. And if these are the only options that we have, this is what is going to ensure life. This is the survival in life. So one of the things we have to do is respect where people are, because that's the best they know. I want you to look at those bodies, misshapen, tense, I'm out of balance. Then watch people, and you'll see very similar things, maybe not exaggerate. All right, so here you are, making now the greatest effort to do the best you can, which is to take the position you have and hold it. All right. Now, the part that I add to this and other people like me is we're going to stop the business of trying to get somebody else to do what we want them to do. We're going to move inside. So what I'd like you to do now, each one of you, is simply to act. I'm going to let you be enlightened. So what you do is you start to breathe, saying, I am a manifestation of life. I am of value. And as you do that and breathe, let your body then become standing on its own feet and related to itself. Now watch how that goes. When you're on your own feet, feeling centered, open your eyes, look at your partner, and see what you want to do and do it. Now, you saw something that embodies everything I'm wanting to do. To go from that stance to here. Now, did you notice something? I didn't say to anybody, go put your arms around anybody. That didn't happen that way. You notice something about arms? Let me demonstrate. Come on up here. I want to show you something about arms. You know how much easier it is to move your arms this way than that way? And when you're balanced, your arms want to do that. So just see how your arms want to move out. Yeah, don't they want to move out? When you're all centered? Now, I want to show you something else. Would you try now to put your arm on one, take the blaming stance, like that. Now, how in the hell are you going to move your arms out? And that doesn't mean there aren't times when you're negative. I've seen people like this and say, I'm doing this because I love you. Anybody else ever saw that? Yeah, now, wonderful thing. It looks like this, and it feels awful. This is lower back pain. Lower back pain. So anytime you get a lower back pain, take a look at what you've been doing. Isn't everything, but it's certainly a big thing. All right, now see what happens in your body. You're standing there, giving yourself a message of value and love. And then let's see how your arms want to move forward. Yeah. It doesn't matter what country I go, it's always been the same. But you can't do that in any of these other positions. Thank you, my dear. All right. Now, you have moved from where society has been for thousands of years. The nice people were benevolent in their dominant submission. The nasty people were malevolent. And so what we were busy trying to do was to change malevolence to benevolence. And we hoped that would happen. So we have fewer murders and such like. All right, now, I want to ask you something. What do you feel right now? What does your body feel like?
Good, whole, connected to Louis for the first time now. Wonderful.
When I do these dances with families, they tell me things like that. Hey, my God, there's my father. He's been here for 40 years. I've been here for 20. We just got together. What are you aware feeling?
Very good, relaxed, and it's the first time I've had a chance to look at Sean in any way.
again and again and again in the families I've treated. It's the first time I really saw my kids. Now, what is so important for me, I don't know if it's that important for you. These shifts come about not because we take hours and hours to work on a problem. How are you feeling right now?
I feel very good. I have some thoughts that are back here, like when Don was down.
Why don't you come over here, Sue, because I want everybody to hear.
When Don was down looking up at me in the placating stance and I was patting him on the head, I was thinking of my children. And I felt very sad and also disgusted and wanting them to be up. And then I looked again, and when Virginia asked us to come up and just be centered and breathe in, I really got in touch with here in the moment. And my body relaxed, and it was like I let go of them and just allowed them to be who they are and be more in me and see, because I said when I was looking down there, all I saw was there and not the world that I'm in. And going inside, I realized that it's my responsibility to stand on my own 2 feet and just breathe in and be aware of who I am. And that's really a wonderful person. And I feel really good.
That's what I call empowerment. And that's my job with where I teach. That's the parents' job with their children. That's other people's job to empower. That's what I call that. Now, what are you feeling, Don?
I felt a really good sense of release of the things that I put in the way of being close to her. And when we were able to stand up and look at each other, I felt wonderful as I was breathing. I felt as if I was breathing her into me. And it felt just like a wonderful release.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Alice.
Sorry.
Is that right?
Yes.
Did I do it right? Okay, sure. Let's be over here so that people don't have to have their ears strained. I don't want anybody to hallucinate or hurt their ears at the same time.
I feel very centered, very peaceful, very whole in myself, and I recognized the placating position from my childhood, and it felt so good to take a shift to feel totally responsible for my own everything, my own wholeness, and also to face Mary Alice and feel that there was a wholeness between us too. The whole energy just changed, and I felt my body just shift into. I feel real grounded right now, and here I am, and here she is, and we can have I felt it felt so good to connect with her as two beautiful people.
I'm very glad, because I know this happened. It's happened with me over and over again. I get a family, and they're in terrible places. All I do is get them to work on their structures, their stances, and there they are. See, that's the body. It's a misshapen and constricted experience for the body to not be standing on its own feet and flowing. Thank you. Well, Mary Alice, what about you, love?
Feels much better to be able to let go of the tension. I realized when I had to stand and be very rigid, it didn't feel good. I also had an awareness that came in that really I was disgusted with Alice while I was blaming her. I wanted her to get up off the ground, and what occurred to me was if I would just take my hand down and quit blaming her for being down there, it felt a whole lot better.
We'll learn a lot more in that, because one of the things I would love for you to remember is you have been subject to these things all your life. How many of you right now know how to placate? Let me see. Down on your knees. Right, okay. Now, how many of you know how to blame? Wonderful. Not that you blame, but wonderful that you know it, because if you know it, then you'll be able to catch it sometimes and then decide, do I want to continue the blaming? How many of you know how to be rigid and what I call super reasonable? Let me see how you know that. That's supposed to be when you go to school. And how many of you know how to be distracting and moving out toward that you get off the point, the thing that I call irrelevant? All right. Any one of those things, when it comes to you, is telling you that your body is off balance. when you find it out, and that some way the shoulds and oughts in your life are clashing, and old triggers are coming back. So we'll go on with that. Okay, so now just to make this point, and then we'll stop for a while. I'm going to use you two. Would you take the blaming, placating position? Just blame. One of you blame, one of you placate. All right. Now, that's blame. Now, will you now pat him? Okay. Now just change it around, and you get up, you get down. All right. Now, if that's what we've been doing, which I think we have, our laws and everything else are into that one, then here we are at this seminar, becoming more fully human. We are steeped in this. So it's not going to be an easy thing for you to say, well, I won't do that anymore. What we need to work at is the awareness of this. That's why when you're in your triads and one of you wants to go like that, you say, bless this for letting me know. Instead of, oh my God, look at me, I'm doing the same old thing. This is the idea that I would like for you to get into your heads. To be able to substitute, oh my God, ain't it awful, for, hey, I'm getting to be in touch with what's happening. That's the part that saves us. I'm interested in the stuff that the police departments in California are doing now, helping people to be aware so that they don't have to act without awareness. It's very, very interesting. But anyway, all right. So you can say nice, you can say nasty, and even nice or nasty. Those two have to have a communication that's going to be nose to navel or nose to crotch, depending on how old they are. And that's not a very whole picture. Now, what we're doing in this whole month is going to be devoted to now becoming aware. Now, the first thing is to let each of you now become aware of what your body feels like. Close your eyes, take a breath, and now let your body expand so that it is comfortable and you're on your own feet. When you're on your own feet, you are following your own choice making. But how many people tell me, well, I can't do it because they won't let me. So, and the way is, the rewards are magnificent. And what we're doing is living through thousands of years of acculturation about how we move with one another, certainly in Western culture. And that we have been putting our energies into making the nasty a little bit not so nasty, instead of going where we need to move, which is a totally new place, to being in touch and of valuing. What I saw as I experienced the many things that I did all over the world, that I saw basically that people came from two approaches. And the one I just started and demonstrated this morning was what I call the threat and the reward approach. That really speaks to the dominant and submission way of looking at relationship. And the feelings that you talked about this morning, and I'll just put down a few, were feeling angry, fearful, isolated, and some of the other feelings that we talked about. All right. There is no way we can feel whole if we have those kinds of interactions. It just isn't. Because we always have to worry about being knocked off. We always have to worry about the threat and the reward. That's the biggest anxiety of this world, the threat and the reward. Look anywhere around at the international relations, national relations, intercity, whatever it is, threat is always there. And behind threat is fear. And to get rid of fear and threat, most of the time people capitulate. And it never works because that's more fear. All right. But anyway, what I said, as far as I could see, that the whole world was dominated, with some exceptions, dominated, especially the Western world, by this way of managing relationship. All right. Now, therefore, if I know what a relationship, how a relationship is lived out, I can make absolutely good predictions about what's going to happen. I can make predictions about the physical. I can make predictions about the psychological. And within minutes, moments, if I'm with people, I know exactly where they are. Because their body position will tell me where they are in their self-esteem. These are all self-esteem positions. Also, what you're seeing and what I'm seeing is the defense against the awful low feeling of self-esteem. The fact I'm really not any good. And that's another poison in our world, is that we have somehow worked it out so people have to always feel, or maybe not always, but feel that they're not any good. They're not as good as that one. They should be better, etc. And that's something that I hope after this month that you will never ask again, am I okay? You will know you are okay. You won't ever have to ask again. Now, all right. Now we come to the next part. What's the definition of a person? For people who hold the threat and reward approach, the definition of a person is someone who should conform and obey. Okay. And the symbol I use for that one is a box. Now, how many of you have found yourself saying, I'm too much of this and I should be something of that? Let me see. All right. Okay. Those are the two TOO should twins. I'm too much of what I am and I should be something else. Now, to conform means that I have to make myself in the way that somebody else wants. And to do that means then I have to cut myself off. I wonder if I've got enough sweaters here. I want to do a quick thing. Sweaters or jackets. Oh, good. Fine. Wonderful. I'd like a volunteer to come up here. Come, Kelly. Okay, we might have a few more. Will somebody be my holder? Good. Come and be a holder here so I can get it. All right, here's this wonderful, magnificent being, of which you all are. Well, I think what we ought to do is her arm ought to be up here. I will use my ropes after this. But all right, we'll just put her up there like that, and then we'll cover it over later. And I think her head ought to be tipped over like that. And will you bend this knee? Okay. And now will you put up this finger? All right. Now, what I want you to do, and then you bend over a little bit like that. Now what I want you to do is lift one leg and walk gracefully.
Like this?
Well, walk gracefully.
You can't.
Yes, you can. If you are really interested enough in pleasing me, you will walk gracefully. All right. Now, let yourself relax. I'm going to do this one more time. When we're little, nobody says to us, do we want? We just do. So it's going to be better to do this, we think. We do it. Okay? And if it's better to do that, we do it. And if it's better to do that, we do it. Then after a while, the relationship is, if I do what you want, I will have life, and I will pretend that everything is just fine. Now, I'm going to keep that one and bend over a little bit. Now, if we can put enough defenses on, these are all defenses. And then we watch her try to be graceful. And we give her A for trying. But you know, very soon, she's going to have to collapse. This is the kind of stuff we've been working against. Now, in this seminar, let's get acquainted with what we know about ourselves. Let's get acquainted with that. Let's get acquainted with this, all this stuff. I call these defenses. Let's get acquainted. I see. I have something a little inside. I don't feel good about it, so I make believe like I don't have it. Okay, but now let's look. This is a tricky business. If this is what I need to be loved, what am I going to do when I give this up? How am I going to feel? Because pretty soon if I take all this off, she'll feel naked. So I can't take all this off. I can take one little bit off, then I can start, and I can be connected with her, and I can ask her how she feels. How do you feel?
A little lighter, but in a way it's like scary because you did take it off, and it's comfortable to have.
All right, so now at this moment in time I need to pause. So she's now scary. Let's see, because I'm aware that she's not balanced at this moment. She doesn't know she isn't balanced, standing on one leg. All right, so now I ask you to just go inside your body, and how do you feel?
Tight.
Okay.
And uncomfortable.
Let's see what would happen if you would just allow yourself to see if you could straighten up, breathe. What happened?
Feel better,
Okay.
more relaxed.
All right, now it would look like maybe we have a chance to take a look at this and see what happens if we take that off. How does that feel?
Lighter.
Lighter. And now would you check in yourself and see how you feel now, how your shoulders are feeling? If you feel any tension any place?
I still have this hand cocked.
Oh, you
in protection.
do? I see, okay. Well, at this moment in time, let's go and see how that arm feels.
Tense.
Tense, okay. Well, let's see what would happen if you would ask that arm what that arm would like you to do.
Relax and maybe let some more of my defenses.
Well, just talk to your arm. Your arm wants you to relax, so relax it. See what happens. So what happened?
Feels better.
See, she talked to her arm, and her arm gave her a message. Now let's see what happens if we might just even take that off. How do you feel now? Check
Much
through.
better.
Much better.
Much better.
We can let go these defenses only when we feel centered. Many people come along and want to strip them. You want to strip them. Don't do that. Do it a little at a time. And now let's see how this all feels.
More centered, but not complete.
All right, let's see. Then take a breath and let's see what happens. And here's one that's kind of lying on your shoulder. How does that feel?
Okay, but it's still, I want it back to...
Where do you want to put
comfort.
it? Where do you want that now? Do you want it where it was? Or do you
Yeah.
want it someplace else?
I want it where it was.
Okay, and now that you put it back there, what are you aware of in your body?
That I think I want to let go of it, but yet I don't.
And is that all right with you?
Not really.
Not really. Well, maybe at this point, let's see if you can walk gracefully even with that on your shoulder. Maybe that is if you want to. And you think you can?
Yeah.
Well, maybe all you have to do now is give yourself more time. We don't have to do everything at once. Thank you. All right. To conform and obey, we've all tried to ensure our survival, no matter what it takes. And in order to, when we conform and obey and it costs us our balance, what we have to do is to develop defenses. So our defenses become our survival. It's as simple as that. And then we have to shape and reinforce our defenses. I am good. Don't you dare tell me I'm not. And there are even people in the world who believe that that's how you go about it. Kill them. All right. Now we come into this, remembering that there's another factor here. We cannot blame ourselves for something we didn't know. When we come in the world, we don't know. We don't know what we're supposed to do. So what we're doing is we are following models. And it isn't that our models are trying to hurt us. They're just giving us the best they know. So I would like to put these three things together. When we don't know, modeling is what gives us clues. Our parents were our modelers. All the adults around, our teachers are models. And that these are models who also are giving out information about how we should be, which we don't even know. I give you a little illustration about this. I was at a home, a friend, some years ago. Made such an impression. It was a little 3-year-old child. The telephone rang. And it was close to lunchtime. And I heard my friend say on the telephone, "No, I can't come. I'm sick." And so when she hung up, the little girl said, "Mommy, what? Are you sick?" "No, there's nothing wrong with me." Well, why? Never mind, go out and play. So, all right, I noticed that. And then for half an hour later, the lunch was called, and the mother went out and called from the door, and the little girl said, "No, I can't come, I'm sick." And the mother went out and said, "I'll teach you." I said, "Oh, oops, wait a minute." And I took her in the room. And I said, "You know what you just did?" And then I got the telephone call back to her. I said, "You remember when you told this person on the telephone that you couldn't come because you're sick?" I said, "You're not sick, are you?" She said, "No." I said, "Then you lied, didn't you?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Why did you lie?" She said, "Because I can't say no to somebody." "Oh," I said, "now, you bring your little girl in and you tell her that you like the fact that she learns, but she learned something she didn't know all the information about, and that she, the mother, is a little chicken, and she doesn't always know how to say no, so she lies." The little girl's face is just wonderful. Now, that's an example. Modeling. How many of you know that you know how to do that? Let's see. How many of you also know you were recipients of that? Okay. All right, so what makes the difference? The difference simply is that you share what's going on. That's all. All right. Anyway, so we have in our childhood models. The models had power because they were people. They had the power to hurt us. They had the power to love us. They had the power of a lot of things. So in order for us to move, we adapted to what we thought was the behavior that would ensure our survival. And that's how we learned to lie. See, lying is a defense. And this may sound peculiar to you if I say to you that lying is in the interest of trying to help the self. It is not because people are bad. We lie all the time when we are afraid that we are not good. So what I'd like to do, and do with myself, I hope, is to allow, instead of the lie, to put out what is happening and then see what else can happen as a result. Yes, I didn't do that. That's right. Yes, I do feel that way. I know you feel bad about it, but I do feel that way. So that what we come into is now a truth. And the truth is not in the sense of being a liar or not, because this is all in the interest of trying to preserve the feeling of the self. Think about any lies you ever told. They weren't because you were mean. You were afraid. Or if you cheated on your papers, it wasn't because you were bad. It's because you wanted to measure up. Because within this frame, measuring up is very important. Now the words competition, who wins, are in this whole thing. We still write on papers how many you got wrong. Why don't we look at the other side as well? Anyway, so now, the definition of a person. Definition of a person held by most people is that I should be something I'm not. I don't know, how many of you lived in families where it was very clear to you, as you thought about it, that you didn't measure up to the other people in the family? Let me see. There was something wrong with you, okay? And then, how many of you recognized, too, that you kept that to yourself? I'm not going to talk about that, because nobody could talk about that. Well, see, in a funny way, this is a way to try to preserve ourselves. And it takes a lot of energy. Now, there was a torture instrument in the Middle Ages called the Procrustean bed. And this was, I would call, a rehabilitation instrument. Anytime that anybody deviated, they would send them to the Procrustean bed. Now that bed was arranged in such a way so that they always had to make modifications. If you were too tall, they cut off your feet and your head. Treatment was successful. The problem was nobody was around to enjoy it. Think of the metaphor of feet and head. If I don't move like you, if I don't think like you, off. Or if you were, the other one was to be too short. So they cut you in half in the middle. You fit the bed. Problem was you weren't there to enjoy it. Now let's take the metaphor of feeling. Of the cutting in half as feeling. If you don't feel like I do, if you don't think like I do, if you don't act like I do, then off with you. Go back to the Procrustean bed. And who is it? Aren't these the basis of our fears? That we won't measure up? So, people then get into, in order to do this, a lot of avoidance. Who wants to be modified in this kind of way? And unfortunately, our rehabilitation directions have been very much like this. All right. So now, to be a person, definition of a person, you be what you should be, whatever that is. With all of the anxieties and all the fears and all the angers that come with that. Now let's look at the explanation of an event. For people who handle their relationship in this manner, then very often are going to be into the conformance and obedience thing. That love comes from obedience and conformity. When we get to the explanation of an event, there's one right way. And you know who's got it? Whoever has the power. I think you must have heard some of the most crack-brained stuff that you could think of in the way of cognitive things for people who were trying to influence you to their way. Some of your mothers and fathers must have done that. To try to influence you, to use all this cognition that you would never experience. Give you an example. There's only one way. I remember I had a great aunt. So there's only one way that you can clean the dishes. They must be rinsed before you wash them. And then they have to be rinsed after you wash them. And I remember standing at the sink thinking, this is crazy. Crazy. But not being able to say anything about that. I wonder how many of you have had similar experiences. Yeah. Today, when you meet someone and they're doing something crazy and they're telling you, this is going to, if you eat this piece of leaf, you're going to get a new wart or whatever, I don't know what, or you'll lose one. We have to look at that. Because the one right way usually has nothing to do with fact. It has to do with survival. That you must do what I want you to do. And we find very, very sad things. Unfortunately, it has permeated a lot of our understanding of problems of people. One right way, one factor, and one effect and one cause. That's what this is all about. I never forgot a nutrition conference in California, San Francisco, one time. There was on the second sheet was a report of research that said that if you eat butter, produces cancer, so eat margarine. Then there was a study on margarine, and it said if you eat margarine, you will get cancer, so eat butter. And when we get into those single factor things, the one right way, they're also called panaceas. I found it. Everybody sits up 3 times in the morning at 7 o'clock and says, whoo, and you will change. And we're full of panaceas, and people pay thousands of dollars for panaceas. One right way. Now, I'll give you something some of you know. I just happen to like it on the one right way. Many thousands of years ago, there was a place in the jungles, in the tropics, and everybody was really wonderful. They had a wonderful time. One day, one of the young warriors was walking along, and a banana slipped off a bunch in his path, and he slipped and broke his hip. Obvious conclusion. Bananas break hips. You saw it, didn't you? What's the right thing to do now? Ban bananas. Of course, that's the culprit. So this was a society that cared a lot for people. They didn't want any people to have broken hips. So they started on a campaign to ban bananas. Well, they had to invent reasons because a lot of people liked to eat them. They tasted good. But, well, finally, through threats and through laws and through word of mouth, they got people to know that it was illegal to eat bananas. And there were people who were put in prison for eating them and all that. Finally, however, after about 1,400 years, the eating bananas was only kind of, yes, maybe we did sometime. But bananas break hips. Everybody knows that. So one day, a little kid came from someplace. He looked at the bananas. Oh, they look so good. He started eating them. So everybody's waiting. Hips are going to break. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. Not in 10 minutes. They said, well, surely it'll be in 15. A week. Well, after about 6 months, they figured out that maybe the bananas didn't break hips. Maybe they were wrong. But only a few people could say that, not too many. Well, finally, like other things that we know are absolutely right, more people ate bananas, they got fat on them, and they were healthy and all that. And then another 2,000 years later, or 4, they said, you know, maybe we were wrong. I think almost all of us were brought up on a banana story, one way or another. These banana stories are, this is what happens. They get translated into rules that we will talk about later. Just for fun, how many of you already remember a banana story? Yes, Madonna? What is it?
My grandmother told her daughters that if they sit on a man's lap, the next thing was pregnancy.
If you sit on a man's lap, her grandmother said you'll get pregnant. All right, let me see, what was yours?
If you sit on concrete, you'll get hemorrhoids.
If you sit on concrete, you'll get hemorrhoids. What else?
If you dye your hair and pierce your ears, you're no good.
If you dye your hair or pierce your ears, you're no good. Yes.
If you drink,
go ahead, Mary Sue.
If you drink black coffee, you're going to turn black.
If you drink black coffee, you'll turn black. Who else? Yes.
If you masturbate, you'll go blind.
If you masturbate, you'll go blind. Oh, boy. Yes, let's have a few more. Yes.
If you get chilled or cold, you'll get sick.
If you get chilled or cold, you'll get sick.
If you don't go to school, you'll never make it in life.
If you don't go to school, you'll never make it.
If you move too far away, it means you don't love us.
If you move too far away, you don't love us.
Always wear clean underwear because you might be in a wreck.
Now, I want to ask you a question. I think every one of you knows that that's foolish. However, have you also been aware that every once in a while the feeling about that comes back? Yeah. Okay, so we know that's nonsense, but there it is, because it was with us a long time. All right, so we get into the one right way. And one of the other things is, here in this group, when you come in touch with your one right ways, that is not a signal for you to give up right away, but to take a look. Hey, I wonder if this really is so. And what I do this professionally. I read a lot of stuff. And I'm open to it. I read something and it sounds backwards to what I've been thinking, so I look into it. Because just because something's on a printed page doesn't mean that it is wise. Have you noticed that? So what I need to be able to do is to just keep checking back and to see whether these things fit or not. However, wars have been fought, people have been killed. Remember the religious wars? I got the right way, kids. So again, what we get into is this idea of this is right. But what I'm also aware of, you see, our cognitive part, even though it lasts when we are those things, there's those little funny feelings. I don't know if some of you had these worries about masturbation when you were a kid, and then you masturbate when you're an adult, and every once in a while some of those things go in, or you sit on a man's lap and you shouldn't be doing. It's not the content so much as it is a verboten kind of thing. All right. So, and then in the explanation of an event, there's always somebody to blame. A person to blame. So, if there is one effect, one cause and one effect, there's got to be somebody to blame. So, when the milk turns over on the table, who's to blame? And people go looking for the culprit. Now, looking for the culprit will turn a lot of people into the scapegoat. So it comes about who is to blame. And some pretty sad things have happened, especially to children, but not necessarily confined to them. I saw one time at a family, a little kid, maybe 2.5, had milk and spilled the milk. And the father got furious. Said to the wife, "Can't you ever teach that kid anything?" By the way, these were people in upper echelon, so please, just like you know. What does upper echelon mean? It means they had money. All right, doesn't mean anything else. So they had a white tablecloth on the table. And I looked at that, and I looked at that father. His face turned red. And he said, "Send that kid away from the table." Well, the child went crying. And then this one, too, he said, "Go and take her in her room. Don't let her out till she stops crying." All right. So I got a big mouth. Every once in a while I have a big mouth. And I said, "I am absolutely flabbergasted. What happened to you?" To this guy. I knew him a little bit. I don't usually go out, when I don't know people too much. He said, this is the 4th night that kid has spilled the milk, and I'm out of patience. I said, "Have you ever looked into what happens when she spills the milk?" He said, "I told her she shouldn't." I said, "That's very nice." He said, "By this time you should know that doesn't work very well." But he had never looked at what it was. Well, it seemed like, to me anyway, that there was already nervousness between the mother and father. And the little girl was sitting beside her mother. And so where she's scared to death of her father. And also, when I watched her at another time picking up the glass, and she was very nervous about this. So I asked him, I used my big mouth again, and I said, "Look, I want to talk to you. Will you be willing to listen?" And then I went into all of this. Well, the father then was very chagrined, like that mother was who was going to beat her kid for not obeying. See, what that all says to me is, some people call this character. But what this all says to me is that we are so bound in many, many ways by ways we view things that we don't even know this. And it certainly happens with children. All right. Now we come to the 4th thing, which is the attitude toward change. For people who hold that relationships are in some form of dominant and submission, and use conformity and obedience to define themselves and look for the one right way, then what they have to do with change is stop it as much as possible. Because change means going into the unknown, and we mustn't do that. We must be always keeping what right here where we know it, so that the whole thrust in this is to stop change, or take as little as possible. So change then becomes an extraordinary thing which must be guarded against. So when the little kids, or when a kid becomes adolescent and they want to dress in different clothes, somebody has a heart attack, or any kind of change, you change the way you look, or you change the way you talk, or any kind of change, gets scary within this kind of frame. And a minute that then something is changing, what has to happen immediately, which you know about, are the defenses have to be there. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to have support groups for change. Otherwise we get into that kind of trouble. Because these people who do this, feel that the security is based in keeping status quo. Don't rock the boat. Keep status quo. Now, I didn't do this very well, but then this should be, I took up too much room. The effort here is to maintain status quo. So I'll just write maintain status quo. And then then people feel is safety, maintain the status quo. And you know from what I talked to you about in the change process, maintaining a status quo, of course, means that you can't go anywhere. But if you do go somewhere, you have to do it out of guilt. You have to make believe like you don't own it. You have to project it on somebody else. You know how that goes? The guilt, well, I shouldn't have done it. Or you made me do it. Or I really wasn't there when it was happening, even though I was. So we have to do all kinds of funny things that have negative implications for moving, for changing. We have to, if once we say change is bad, then any way we deal with it, we have to also call bad. And look around in the families, look around at international relations, look around anywhere. And people, I think, get mixed up that homeostasis means no change. Homeostasis simply means the new balance. And no new balance is going to happen unless we go through all the stages of change. So you will find this over and over again. That's why I said, maybe it comes a little clear to you that your triads, and then indeed your condos, anywhere you find people, is your place for taking a look at what will surface. I keep getting amazed over and over again that I keep finding things that come up that I have a chance to take a look at. And what I like about me at this point is I don't push that away anymore. I look at it, and that's fine. But we were young, but this way. We were helpless when we came in the world. We had to depend upon who was around us, and we still don't know all of the stuff we learned. And it keeps popping up. So anyway, that's why what I do in this seminar is to try to make as many structures that are going to allow us to take new looks at where we are. Because actually, nobody really, if I say to somebody, I know that you don't want to go into the unknown, that you don't want to change, they won't say that that's right. They'll say, I'm afraid to. They'll say, what will happen if I do? And they will tell me more about how that it's too much for them. That's why all the support and the trust and the willingness to move and to try out things is so important. And why for somebody to say, oh, if you just stopped doing what you were doing, everything would be fine. It doesn't work that way. The world is in this space. Psychology has been in this space when we had it, because it's not very old. Human relations have been in this space because this is all the world knew for so long. That doesn't leave out the fact there were people with good hearts. There were people with wonderful intentions. But just like up here, I had to keep those things inside. I didn't dare talk about it. If I'm grown up, I shouldn't talk about my doubts, etc. So that when this last century came to an end, prior to that, we began what I considered was the first seed to what we can do now, which came with Freud. The discovery that inside we have the ability to change, and that change can be destructive or constructive. We don't have to wait for the outside. All right, so let us say this is thousands of years old. Entrenched, very entrenched. Now, I want to go to another part. I believe that we started something new in the planet when two things happened. So we had the bomb and the Holocaust. We know that we can take the destructive part of ourselves and kill off everything. We know that. And ever since that time, what's interesting is that the seeds for something else are coming and have come. Now, the war was over in 1945. Before the war was over, there was such a need for people to, certainly in the Western countries, to have enough women and manpower so that we could win, that a very interesting thing happened which nobody would have ever thought. Ways that we had of helping people psychologically were mostly all psychoanalytic. It was a long, involved process. When the time came to help people in the war, we didn't have years to help these people before they went back to the front. They had to do it like this. And that was the beginning of working with health. And it started in our armed forces. So we were beginning to take a new look about what people were about. Because up to this time, this was pretty much entrenched in the whole of life. Now we had to get people back. It was the beginning of looking at maybe people had something else beside aggression and the ability to be victimized and hard work and all that. Maybe they had something else. And some very interesting words began to emerge. Human potential. Which merely meant that we had things within ourselves that we had never ever thought about. Now, along that time, and I believe here's where the planet gives us something. Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, Jim Bugenthal, Charlotte Bueller, a little later on me, Rollo May, and some other people began to hear and feel inside that we had more than what we thought. And that we needed to tap that. And it not only that, but we needed to tap the positive of that. Now, I'd like to take you back. Those of you who aren't old enough, or those, well, you can hear from me, but some of you who are, or you've read. When World War II ended, look at what happened. Women began to ask for freedom. During the war, men went away, and the women had to man the factories and all of that, and women said, "Hey, we're pretty okay." So, when the war was over, women had a position of submission. And they said, we don't want that anymore. We want to be up on our feet. The beginning of the women's movement. Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique in the early 50s. Then the people with the different colored skin says, we don't want anybody on our neck. We want to be equal with everybody else. And then you saw all of the things that happened, the riots and all kinds of other things, which were efforts for those who had somebody on their neck to say, I don't want this. And the territorial borders of many of the countries changed. People said, we don't want anybody breathing down our neck. We want to be whole. We want to be on our own. And the amount of change that went on was fantastic. But all of it was the same. I don't want anybody on my neck. The changes that happened in Russia and all kinds of other places were efforts to meet. We want to have it different. Now the problem was, and still is, want to go to new possibilities with this process. And that's why at this moment in time, we do have an opening to do that. All right. Now, as the new things came about a new look at human beings, now we look at these 4 factors in relation to the new possibilities. So we look at the first one about relationship. Within this frame, relationship is seen as something between 2 people of value. Each person is of value. And whether that person is 4 weeks old or 84, the equality of value began to assert itself. Now what that meant was that we had to do something about sameness and differentness, which we'll come into in a moment, but to be of value. What we had been doing was to say, well, if you're 4, you're to be seen and not heard. If you're white and uneducated and you're 24, then you're not worth very much. We had put all categories of human beings in a worth basket. And we had said this is worthy and this is not worthy. How many of you know about that? Okay. We brought up with that a lot too. Okay. So that was a whole new thing. We're at the edge of that now. We're not by any manner and means finished. I still feel and get people say, you mean everybody is equal? I said, yes. Well, how can that be when this one doesn't have this education and then that one doesn't do this and that? I said, it's the equality of value. Now, the minute you get into value, you know you're getting into life force. You're getting into the value of life. So this began to develop equality of value. Now we have things called humanistic medicine, humanistic treatment, and then to some people, humanism means anti-religious. So where you get all that stuff too. After all, God made you to be a servant, so why don't you stay that way? Or whatever. Anyway, so this is a new concept that we have relationships based on equality of value, which means we have to separate role from identity. Your role is simply a definition of function. It's not your identity. So we have to do the separation. Now let me give you a little example. I still meet people when I say to them, what do you do? She says, if it's a she, I'm a mother. I say, you doing it now? If so, I'm not your child. Or I sometimes meet, as I do, and if I can play a little with it, I go to places and I might meet someone and they say he's a doctor. I said, are you doing it now? If you are, don't send me a bill. Anyway, the point of it all is that we have become role conscious. And so the identity has been squashed underneath the role. I do not look in the yellow pages for dentists, doctors, or anyone much, sometimes to fix my shoes. So the role doesn't mean very much to me. Have you noticed that? Do any of you go pick your doctors out of the phone books? Or you don't? So we also know something else. We know that role is not identity. But then, any of you in the helping professions, I think, have suffered from the idea that you should have a certain role. The day that I decided that I had no role, except what I did at a moment in time, which was a function of something. It's function. When I'm through mothering, I'm no mother anymore. Why do I need to be a mother when I'm not one? And if I'm not in a particular relationship, I'm just there. That's a function. But I carry myself with me all the time. So that you can see, if you're with me in a treatment context, you'll be meeting me. If you're in a training context, you'll be meeting me. And we will work out the roles, but me will always be there. So I can share with you what's going on, whatever I can. My humanness is what's going to be the model. I went through periods where I thought, oh gosh, if I'm going to be a professional, I can't do that, I can't do this, I got to wear all those awful clothes. You would not believe it. But once my closet was full of black, brown, gray, and navy blue with white blouses. Anyway, all right. So this is quite a difference from a relationship of dominance and submission. This morning, what I did when we were able to move, feeling ourselves and being able to stand on our own feet and then connecting, those were relationships of value, related on value, not on dominance and submission. All right, now let's go to the second part, which is the definition of a person. And what we know is that a person is unique. What does that mean? They're made up of sameness and differentness. That means I can guarantee anywhere I go in the world, I will have guaranteed sameness to everybody I see. And that will be a physical one. I know my heart's sort of on the right center upper, and my feet are on the bottom. I very seldom find people with feet on their head. And I know that we're all breathing, and I know that we're all feeling, and I know that we are relating to the world. No. So that sameness I can count on. That sameness gives me the connection, of course. Everybody drinks water. It's amazing. If I go somewhere and I say, they'll bring me a drink of water. Everybody knows that. It's fascinating to see. And one of the things, we're going to do an exercise at some point where you'll get in touch with your sameness with everybody. Now, we also are guaranteed differentness. There are no duplicates of any of us. No duplicates. We are all combination of sameness and differentness. This becomes another spiritual concept. like snowflakes, are all unique. Fingerprints are all unique. You know, we passed the 5 billion mark here on the Earth, I think 2 or 3 months ago. We had 74 billion that preceded the 5 billion, at 79 billion. And do you know that everyone had a unique fingerprint? Think about that for a minute. So being of the same family, of the same clan, doesn't guarantee total sameness, because we're all different as well. Now, the wonderful thing of finding that how you're different from me and how you are like me, which is the journey into our uniqueness. Now, what would happen if we said when we met someone that we want to journey into the uniqueness instead of, let me see, I want to figure out whether that's good or that's not so good. Do an assessment on good or bad. That's happening, but it's still quite a far away. It's quite a ways away. So when we think of racial differences, we think of nationality differences, we think of political or religious, you know that you're always going to find sameness. You find blaming, placating, super reasonable, irrelevant everywhere you go. No matter what color or what religion, what political affiliation. You can also find leveling. You must all know that. You're going to find differentness. So you see, when people tell me Mexicans are like this, women are like that, I simply smile. Say, I don't think you've been around much. I used to get very upset with people telling me, I think I mentioned this when I went abroad, this is how those people are. I did some work for the Peace Corps, and Peace Corps sent 9 people over to Nepal. Within 2 weeks, they sent 8 of them back. And so called me in. Well, I could see what was happening. These people were trained to say, now, this is what a Nepalese is like. If you see a Nepalese woman with a ring in her nose, don't say anything. Behave as though there's nothing there. And so there was this stilted, stiff kind of business, and so they didn't really ever connect. Anyway, see, one of the things, I respect all differentness, but I know that all differentness in a human being is also related to sameness. So when I meet a human being where I don't find a sameness right away, then I let myself know what the differentness is, but then I need to look for the sameness. And I think of things like sitting on the toilet. Or I've been in enough places in the world where you don't have a toilet to sit on. Maybe you got just a place to squat. But everybody has to relieve themselves of their feces. And it's a very leveling experience to remember that that goes on. So anytime you figure out you're so different from someone else or they're so different from you, remember that. It's what I give to people when they get stage fright. I said, just look at everybody on the toilet. It'll help you. Now, as I said, this is a spiritual manifestation here. I choose to look at it that way. But what I'm finding is each one an absolute magnificence, because you're manifestations of life force. That's how come we can sit at a table with many nations and many colors if we have this idea, and we can always make it. Now, a very interesting thing goes with that. I've already forecasted for you. We are seeing the manifestation of life force done in a physical form. Where did we come from? We came from the connection between egg and sperm. Egg and sperm are two ways, two names, to talk about how you put positive and negative together to get something. What is that? That's spiritual. So, what we have, we're in the river. It's a river of life which surrounds us all the time. And so here we come up, and we bubble, and others come up and bubble, and we move, and so on. So then that idea of being one in life becomes very important. We have just begun to introduce spirituality into human relations. Religious people a long time ago did it, but many times when they did it, it was only blaming and placating. I don't necessarily equate religion and spirituality, but it can happen sometimes. All right, now here then, remember when I started you off and you came together was to begin to be in touch with your own uniqueness. And that it was not, didn't have to be compared, it didn't have to be competed with. It was you. You, the only one exactly like you in this world. You, someone to discover. I don't know how many of you, there used to be bakeries where they would make pies and then they would put these metal things on so a pie would have 6 exact sections and you just like that. Well, I think stamped pie. I think that many of us from here were stamped out in this kind of way. So we have that to look at too. Now let's look at the business about the explanation of an event. By the way, I call this the seed model. It's about life. Now when we look at the explanation of an event, with people who look at the world this way, then they realize that all events are the outcome of an interrelatedness among many variables. And that's a systems concept. So that means that event E happens, and that's the result of the relationship with A plus B plus C plus D plus E and F maybe. That all means E. You yawn. That's the interrelationship of all kinds of things. You break a cup. You run a race. You speak a word. That's all the interrelationship of so many things. What's happening now, and we've not had about 45 years since we began this, or so, 80, 40, yeah, that's right, to find out that when we want to look at something happening, a symptom in a family, that we can't say, well, it's that. What we have to do is begin that wonderful and also tedious sometimes task of looking. What are all of these things? And what did we find? We found that somebody at a moment in time is reacting to what's going on inside, what's going on outside, the way they view the world, the fears that they have about the future, the regrets they have about the past, and all that. And at this moment in time, they're cutting off their finger. Or they're getting the Nobel Prize. See, when I said to you earlier, the event is not for me the important piece. It's the coping with the event. That's piece one. However, there is another piece there, and that is to recognize that anything that happens at a moment in time has already had many choice points. And one of the things I try to do is to help people to sort out all of these things, to know at a moment in time you're here, and you're with somebody, or you're with the air, or whatever you are, that there are always interacting variables. And the art and the skill and the detective work is finding out, hey, what all kinds of things have gotten so that I don't feel comfortable with men? Or that every time I go to my mother's house, I shiver. Or when I'm with my father, I think everything is going to be just fine. That's not just one variable. That's a whole lot of things. So teasing out all of these interrelationships begins to be really a wonderful detective story. And when we can look at this, as we are as scientists looking at how this goes and then that goes, then we can begin to get excited about things. But if we say, oh, that's good. No, that's bad. Oh, that's bad. No, that's good. I remember one time I was working with a family. And somebody said something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, the reaction was that the kid started to cry. Papa tapped his foot, and Mother turned her back. And I looked at all of that. I knew they were all related. And when I was able just to simply share what I saw, hey, you said something, and then this happened, and that happened, that happened. And then I went on to say, okay, now that you know that happened, that happened, what are you feeling? Well, I was able to change something that was awful into something that was growth-producing within a matter of moments. Now, system. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the system, but I'm going to give you a very simple, oversimplified definition. All that system is an interplay of action, reaction, and interaction among a set of variables which are essential to an outcome. That's all it is. All right, let me try it. Let me do it over again. System, which is a set of actions, reactions, and interactions among a set of variables essential to a single outcome. Now, I'll give you this. And you have a family. Here's a family. And this family wants to look good. Everybody wants to look good. Who is in the family? Ma, Pa, and 2 kids. Those are the essential variables. What have they agreed upon for the outcome? That they should have a nice family life. All right. Now, how then are these essential variables? What kind of actions between father and mother and the kids, reactions from one to the other, and interactions between them that's going to allow for their desired outcome? That's all it is. This is part here, right now, is helping us to know that much of our earlier research is not valid about people. About research that came out like 25 years ago, I remember, that said that children of divorced parents would have problems. And it was the implication that they would. If women worked, it was bad for the children. I mean, there are a whole lot of things. So one of the things that's important is to take a look at what you think you believe, which is right back there. So we take a look here. When I said to you, precedents don't mean anything to me. If it happened yesterday, fine. If it worked yesterday, fine. If there's something out of that we can use today, but it does not become a guide for me. Well, that's because I don't know what all the systems are. Now, one other piece about system. I use a fire hydrant as an example. You can expect that a fire hydrant would have water in it, wouldn't you? But what is your proof? You don't have any proof. You won't have any proof until you open it. Some people have opened fire hydrants and there was nothing there. All right, let's look at that. There's the fire hydrant, it's an outcome. And you say to yourself, there will be water in there. If you want to really know that there's going to be water in there, you have to open it up. Now, what if you open it up and there's no water? Well, that means you have to go looking. Where is the water? Then you can go into the fire hydrant if you want and go find the water and see what happens. Idea is that 2 parts. One is that what looks like it is connected may or may not be. And the second part of it is that the connections are present but not obvious. That's another important piece. Let me tell you about that. I'll use the old fire hydrant again. Here's the fire hydrant here, however it looks. And you can't see the sources of the water. You make an assumption. So whatever are the parts that lead the water, maybe they're 500 miles away where that water comes from that fire hydrant. Maybe it goes up mountains and down valleys and heaven only knows. So all the things that are present to make the A plus the B and so on, you don't see. It's all covered up. Maybe all you see is a source over here, and then you see the outcome. So we're going to do something called the ingredients of an interaction at some point. Here is the outcome, there is the source. What tells us what happens? How do we get from the source to the outcome? How did you get from where you were when you were born to here? Lots of stuff. Everything happened because you got here. But it is present but not manifest. Whenever I ask you, what are you feeling, what are you seeing and hearing, or what are you feeling and thinking that leads you to that conclusion, I am asking you if you will produce the present but not manifest parts that will explain that. And have you noticed how well that works? When you say, instead of saying something, oh, you're all wrong, say, well, what are you thinking and feeling that leads you to that? That's filling it in, and that's another important piece. Now for this last part over here about change. Change within the seed model is welcomed. It's welcomed. And at the same time, what is also welcomed is the stress that goes with going into the unknown. Of course, I know I haven't been there, so I'm going to have some stress. Of course, I won't know everything. So that every time I go into something new, I become a student. No matter how many degrees I got, no matter how many accolades, I'm always a student going into the unknown. I'm a child moving in because I am going to the unknown. And I can make it a party. I can make it something wonderful. So the change then becomes the freedom to go to the unknown. And thou, the security that we have is that freedom, not maintaining the status quo. And this is a hard one. Alan Watts he wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And this is what he was talking about. That my security is on I can move and I can go into the unknown. Why? Because I've got eyes, ears, mouth, skin, ability to think and feel and move and speak. Do we need anything else? I don't think so. So that now then, security rests on this freedom. Over here, security rests on keeping it exactly like it is. And I was thinking, there was a time when the world only knew flatness, literally. And then I thought, but the world is known to be elliptical now. Now, what I have said about this is that I feel a little like that. I knew and came to know even more. People are not flat. They're round. And I didn't invent it. I only discovered it. And I'm not the only one. So at this moment in time, where we are, our feet, a lot of our past is here. I think to add this makes our present and our future and our world something we've never known before.
Avanta, the Virginia Satir Network, founded in 1977, is a nonprofit educational organization. Membership is worldwide, representing a variety of professions. Avanta sponsors workshops, advanced training programs, international summer institutes, and conferences dedicated to guiding people of the world to become more fully human.